Let's get going. Rabbi Say. We're on DaF Tes Amud Aleph, or actually Ches Amud Beis at the very bottom line. So what does the Gemara say? So the Gemara says, Meya ushmonim v'sulo. You mean only 180? And that's it? Now what is this question? So let's go back. The Gemara had said yesterday that 180 years before the Churban, for destruction of the Second Temple, the Romans, the evil empire, which is a reference to the Roman Empire, spread out among Israel. So the Gemara says, what do you mean 180 years before? Now, the premise of the question, as you'll see in just a minute, is that the Gemara had also stated yesterday that the Roman Empire had to defeat the Greeks in order to be able to have a proliferation of their empire. They were unsuccessful in fighting the Greeks until they banded together with the Jews. And once they allied with the Jews, they had siyata dishmaya, and they were able to defeat the Greeks. So what we're about to demonstrate is that the Jews only were able to dominate the Greeks together with the Romans, and this happened before 180 years before the Churban, as you'll see in just a minute. V'hatani Rabbi Yossi beRebbi Malchus Paras b'fnei Habayis Shloshim v'arba Shana. That the Persian Empire ruled for the first 34 years of the Second Temple. Remember, Koresh authorized its construction, and for 34 years after that, the Persians remained in power. Malchus Yavin b'fnei Habayis Meya ushmonim Shana. The Greeks took over from the Persians, and they ruled for 180 years after that. Malchus Chashmonoi b'fnei Habayis Meya v'shalosh. The Hasmonean dynasty ruled after the Greeks for 103 years, and Malchus Beis Hordus Meya v'shalosh. And the Herodian Empire ruled for 103 years after the Hasmoneans, until the destruction. Now, if you want to know how long the Second Temple lasted, how many years did it last?
401?
No. First Temple was 410. Second Temple is 420. Okay? Now, if you do all the math, 34 plus 180 plus 103 plus 103, you'll get 420. Trust me. Okay? All right. Mikan va'elech tzeva chashov kama shonim achar churban habayis. After you do all of that math and you get 420, if you want to know what year we're in now, you can count. Now that you know the year of the Churban, you now know anything that comes after that period, after the Herodian dynasty, is years after the Churban. But the Gemara's question is, we're going to go through a lot of calculations today. Alma masan v'shis havu, v'atomart meyu shmonim havu, question mark? So the Gemara says, if the Romans could only take over from the Greeks after they allied with the Jews, that means that they rose to power at the same time that the Hasmoneans did. Okay? The Jews were given autonomy by the Romans from the Greeks. And if the Hasmoneans ruled for 103 years, then Herod ruled for 103 years, that's not 180 years before the Churban that the Hasmoneans arose. What is that? 206. So there's a discrepancy of 26 years. Right? So the Gemara answers, Ela esrin v'shish shnin kami behem nusayhu b'hada Yisrael v'lo ishtabdu b'hu v'amati lahachi lo kachashiv l'hu kishapashta malchus harashal Yisrael. So the Gemara's answer is very simple. When the Romans and the Jews first allied to take over from the Greeks, it was the honeymoon. Everyone was lovey-dovey. The Romans loved the Jews loved the Romans, everyone got along. That was great for the first 26 years. After that, the Romans started persecuting the Jews. And so that's what we mean that the evil empire spread for 180 years before the Churban, because that's when they became taka evil. But before then, for 26 years, when we were together with the Romans, it's like the Germans and the Poles and everyone else, right? Everything's great for the first few years, and then it all goes downhill after that. Okay? That's what happened over here.
Quick question. The Hasmoneans took over after the Hanukkah story. Am I not right?
Yeah, but who did they fight? Who did they fight?
The Romans were with them fighting?
Apparently,
I'm confused.
Apparently, according to the Gemara, there was some kind of alliance made between the Romans and the Jews. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Romans were ruling at that time, but there was some kind of alliance, some kind of treaty.
And that's the Hanukkah story. Then.
That's the Hanukkah story.
So the Romans were in on it.
It could be that the Romans were in on it. We don't
That's
know.
how the Jews won. They helped them out.
Could be. Could be that's why the Jews won. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Period from the time of Hanukkah, or from the time when Yochanan actually became free from the Greek rule?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's a good question. Let's go back, go to Josephus, do the math, look at the numbers.
Everything's all, the timing here and the secular understanding of the history is all.
Yeah, there's a lot of discrepancy. A lot of discrepancies between the Talmudic account and the historical record. Okay. Amar Rav Papa. By the way, if you find a discrepancy and it bothers you, don't worry, you're not Bikuris. In other words, these are not foundations of our faith, okay? So, Amar Rav Papa, Itoi haitana v'lo yada prati kamahava lishayli l'safra kamaksiv v'nitfi alayu esrin shnin umashkach le l'chumre v'simaneich zeli esrim shana b'veisech. So, Rav Papa says, Talmidei Chachamim, when they correspond with each other, after the Churban, what date do they put on their correspondences? They usually put on, this is, the date of the Churban is year 0, and they count from there. So if one rabbi is corresponding with another, he'll say, in the year 172 since the Churban, okay? But let's say, you don't have a bank calendar, so you don't know exactly what year it is. You may know what century it is, or how, and you may know even what decade it is since the Churban, but you don't remember exactly what the specific digit number is. How many years since the Churban? Is it 171, 173? I don't really remember. So here's a very simple solution. Go to a scribe, a secular or professional scribe, who, according to the times of the Gemara, what date did they use on their documents? The date since the rise of the Greek Empire. The date of the rise of the Greek Empire was 380 years before the Churban. Now, what do we mean by that? Remember, how long did the Beis HaMikdash stand? How many years? 420. 380 years before then was 40 years into the second Beis HaMikdash. Now we just learned a moment ago that they took over after 34 years, not after 40 years. So how do you resolve that discrepancy? As we'll see at the end of our DAF today, the first 6 years of the Greek Empire did not count for scribes to count because the Greek Empire did not stretch out as far. The formal beginning of the Greek Empire was 6 years later, 40 years into the Second Temple. So when a scribe records the date, he's recording a date that's based on year 0 being 380 years before the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash.
So you don't know where you are, but you know 380 years before you?
No. You're going to go to a scribe who knows the date of the Greek date.
380 years earlier?
No, you're going to a scribe who's writing 2018.
He's using the Goyish calendar.
But he's using the Goyish calendar.
At the time,
the Goyish calendar at the time was not the birth of Yashka, it was the rise of the Greek Empire. Yeah. If you don't know what the Jewish date is, which is based on the years since the Churban, go to a scribe. Ask him, what is your date? Let's say he tells you it's 561. All you need to do is add the number 20 to that, and then you'll get the number of years at least. So you'll add, so you get 81. So it's the century, whatever century we're in, 81. You'll know it's year 181, or you'll know it's year 281 since the Churban. Do you understand the Gemara's Cheshbon now? Because basically, if it's 380, so just add 20 to round it off to 400. And so you're basically, the Greek date is aligned with the Jewish date plus 20. Okay, that's all you have to know. And how do you remember that? Because Yaakov Avinu said to Lavan, I've been in your house for 20 years. So the number 20 is what you can remember. Now, itoi safra nishai l'latana kamachishev unevatzer minayu esrin shtin umashkach le'lechumrei. And if a scribe who forgot what the Greek date and he just wants to record it for, let's say, a secular document, let him ask a rabbi what date it is since the years of the Churban, and then subtract 20. and then he'll be able to write down that date. And v'simanech, and the way to remember whether you add or subtract is safra b'tzira tana tosva. A sofer always has to be very precise, and so therefore we say that a sofer always contracts, makes the letters as terse as possible, and a rabbi learns tosefta, which is addendum. So that means adding. Okay, that's the way to remember it. Tana devei Eliyahu, sheishas alafim shana habi ha'olam, shnei alafim to, shnei alafim toira, shnei alafim yemos hamashiach. Very famous Gemara, origin is in Sanhedrin, that the world is meant to last for 6,000 years. We're in the year 5778 right now. The world's supposed to last for 6,000 years. The first 2,000 years were years of tohu, of chaos, which means there was no Torah. The second 2,000 years were known as the 2,000 years of Torah, when mankind was given the Torah. And the last 2,000 years, which we're currently in, are years of Mashiach, that are propitious for the coming of the Mashiach. Ba'avonosenu sherabu yatsu mehem mashi yatsu mehen. And sadly, because of our sins, whatever has already elapsed after that in these last 2,000 years have already elapsed, and Mashiach hasn't come. But the reason he hasn't come is not because he can't come. He could come now, but because of our sins, we're still holding him back. This is the classic attitude of Chazal, that we're holding back Mashiach because we're now currently in the last 2,000 years. And this Gemara is written after the year 4,000. Now I just want to point out, what is the year 4,000? That's 172 years after the Churban of the Second Temple. Now the way I know this is because, as you'll see from the calculations, Chazal and this Gemara are holding that the Churban happened in the year 68 of the Common Era. Now, whenever you want to calculate the Christian year into the Jewish year, remember this number, 3760. 3760 is the discrepancy between the Jewish date and the Christian date. So if you want to know what is 68 plus 3760,
37, Yitzchak was 37 when he brought to the Kedah, and was 60 when he got married.
okay, so that's how you'll remember it. But what is 68 of the Common Era?
That's how you'll remember it.
Okay, I don't know. That's a great way to remember it. Whatever simon works for you. So 68 of the Common Era plus 3760 is 3828. In the year 3828 of the Jewish calendar was when the second Churban took place. If you add 172 to that, you get 4,000. So 172 years after the Churban, according to this Gemara, is when the Yemos HaMashiach began. So clearly this Gemara is being written 172 years. By the way, that moment, about 172 years after the Churban, is around the age of the last Tanoim, earliest Amoraim. Approximate. Okay, so in any event, the Gemara is now saying, sadly, what has already elapsed after 4,000 has elapsed. Now the question is as follows. The Gemara is going to analyze the numbers, okay?
Does this work out with Rabbi Akiva thinking Bar Kokhba is Mashiach?
Does it work out? Yeah, perhaps it does work out. Maybe it
Very
was
early on.
Although
In the early 4000s.
although
Very early on.
That's
yeah,
only-
Rabbi
that's-
Akiva lived before then. Maybe he was like right on the cusp.
35.
So he's about 40 years before. Or no, he's about much more than that. He's after the Churban, but he's
Over 100 years before.
100 years before. All right, well, it's a kasha on Rabbi Akiva. I'm not sure how to answer that. So the Gemara now says, Shnei alafim Torah me'emas. The question is, when did these 2,000 years of Torah begin? Presumably, they had to begin from the year 2000 in the Jewish calendar. When the years of Tohu ended, that's when the years of Torah began. But the problem is that inema mimatan Torah, ad hashtaleka kulei hai dechima'inus behu trei alfi uprati dehai alpha hu dehavoy. He says that's not going to work out because Matan Torah was after it now enters into the third millennium. And if it's supposed to start after the conclusion of 2 millennia, how can it be that Matan Torah began in the middle of the third millennium?
It's 500 years later.
Well, what was the year of Matan Torah? If you go through the cheshbon that Rashi goes through, it's 2448.
So Avram was 1948.
It's 2448 is the year of Matan Torah. So that's 448 years too late.
Yeah.
So Ella meve esan efesh asher asu b'charan. So rather, it started from the time when Avram and Sarah started to convert people to ethical monotheism. That's the beginning of the years of Torah. Now, Ugumiri de Avram bi'ahishaita bar chamshin v'tarti havu. Our tradition is that Avram was 52 at that time when he started to convert people. And Kama Batzrin. So how much do you have left? Midatani Tana arba meya v'arbaim v'tamani shnin havyan. He says that now Avraham was born in what year? 1948. The way to remember that, of course, is the state of Israel in the Christian calendar, right? There are no coincidences, right? We know that. So Avraham begins 1948. He's born in 1948, and he's 52. So that's the year exactly 2000. Now, Kama Batzrin. So how many years left between that event of when he starts converting people to the time of Matan Torah? 448 years. Ki ma'ainus be mehanefesh asher asu b'charan ad Matan Torah arba meya ve'arboim b'taman yishnin havyan. And when you examine how many years are from the time of Esanefesh Asher Asu B'charan and Matan Torah, you'll also get exactly the year 448. In other words, if you do the math, you're going through the Torah's recording of how many years people lived, you'll get that from the time that Avram was 52 years old until the time of Matan Torah, when Moshe is 80 years old, you'll get exactly 448 years. And so all of the cheshbonos work. So that's what the Gemara is saying. Amar Rav Papa, itoi tana v'lo yada prote kama hava havi lishayle l'safra kama ksiv v'nitfei alayhu arboin v'tamni umashkach le l'chomrei. Now, if a person wants to know what year are we in Yemos HaMashiach, in other words, remember, from the year 4000 and onwards is Yemos HaMashiach. So some rabbis would count in their correspondences. They would say, listen, 172 years after the Churban is when we're going to start counting from the year 4000. And if you don't remember what year you're in, so just ask a sofer, how many years on the Greek calendar, which is 380 years from the, before the Churban, and then add 48 years to that number, and you'll come up with the correct number of how many years, what year, at least the digit of what year we're in after the year 4000. So again, if you want to do all the math, but it works out that if you take into account that the Churban took place in the year 38, what is it? What did I say? 3882? Let's see, minus 172. 3828 is when the Churban took place. And if you subtract from there 380, you get 3448. So it's 24, it's like exactly 1,000 years after Matan Torah is when the Greek Empire arose. So if you want to know, so therefore it's 3448. So just add 48 to whatever the Greek guy tells you, and you'll come to the correct number of years of since the year 4000. Okay? Now v'simaneich arboim ushmona ir. And the way to remember that is there's the number 48 is significant for the numbers of Levite cities. And I guess that's the preparation of Yemos HaMashiach. Okay. Now,
Too bad we don't use that calendar now.
To be restored when Mashiach comes.
Yeah, we'll be restored when Mashiach comes. Okay.
Too bad we don't use that calendar anymore, because all this would be very relevant today.
Right. Yeah, of course. V'toi safra nishayle latana kama katani v'nivtzar minayu arboy mushmona mishkachach leila chumrei. And if a sofer who's writing a secular contract forgets what the Greek year is, he should just ask a rabbi, what year are we in the year of the Churban, in the year of Yemos HaMashiach, rather, and then just subtract from that 48, and then you'll get the correct number on the Greek calendar, at least the last digits. And the simanech safra b'tzira tana tosfan. Once again, the sofer reduces and the rabbi adds. because he learns Tosefta. Amar Rav Huna Bered Rav Yoshua. Here's another calculation. If a person is not sure what year of the Shemitah cycle we're currently in, so here's what he should do. Nitfi chad shasa, he should add 1 year to the year of the from the years of the Churban. So let's say you know how many years it's been since the Churban of the temple. Let's say it's been 262 years since the destruction of the temple. Add 1 year to compensate for the fact that the Churban took place during the first Shemitah year, during the first year of the Shemitah cycle. And then V'nachshav klali biyovle uprate. And then let's say it's 262 since the Churban. So take every century that counts for 2 Yovel cycles, minus 2. Because why? Because each Yovel cycle is 49 years. And as Rashi explains, this Gemara is maintaining that the 50th year of Yovel also is year 1
Year of the new cycle.
of the new cycle. Right. That's a machlokas. There's a machlokas tanoim whether the 50th year is independent and each Yovel cycle is 50 years, or whether the Yovel is the 50th and the first of the new cycle, and therefore each cycle is 49 years. So this Gemara is holding that each cycle is 49 years. So for each century, it's 2 Yovel cycles minus 1, minus 2 rather, because it's 98 years. So therefore, for each century, subtract 2 years, and b'shavui v'nishkal mimeya trei v'nishti aprati v'nachshpuninu leprati b'shavua v'yeda kama shnei b'shavua. And therefore, if it's 2, let's say 272, did I say?
262.
262, I gave an example. So add 1, and you get 263. Then for each century, that's 2 centuries.
Knock off 4.
Knock off 4.
259.
So it's 59. And v'nishkol mimeya trei v'nishti aprati v'nachshavinu leprati b'shavua v'yeda kama shnei b'shavua. So therefore, what you should do is, let's say once again, nitfi chad shasa, right, v'nachshav klali biyoveli uprati b'shavui v'nishkol mimeya trei v'nishti aprati v'nachshavinu leprati b'shavui v'yeda kama shnei b'shavua. So therefore, let's say you get 259, is that 59? So that's now the second year of the Shemitah cycle because it's 7 plus 2. In other words, whatever number you get to, that last digit will indicate to you what year you're holding in the Shemitah cycle. Okay? The simanech kizeh shenasayim hara'av b'kerev haaretz. And the way to remember that for each century, since the Churban, you subtract 2, is there's 2 years of famine in the land. That's what Yaakov says when he comes back to meet Yosef. Amar Rabbi Chanina, achar arba meos lechurban habayis, im yomer lecha adam kach sadeh shave 1,000 dinarim b'dinar echad lo sikach. So Rabbi Chanina is living after the Churban, and he is living around, we don't know exactly what year he lives, but he's a late Tana. And he says as follows: if it's already 400 years after the Churban, which has not yet arrived, but Rabbi Chanina was so certain that Mashiach was coming, because remember, 172 years after the Churban is Yemos HaMashiach. So he's basically saying 400 years after the Churban, for sure Mashiach will come.
This probably explains the whole Bar Kokhba thing.
So if someone will tell you
They're all thinking like him.
that they're willing to offer you a piece of property outside of Eretz Yisrael for even 1 dinar when it's worth 1,000, don't buy it.
Wow.
Because you're going to end up leaving the land anyway. So why waste your money? So b'masnisa,
Flip it.
It's amazing.
buy it and flip it.
Sell to somebody else.
Amazing.
Okay.
But if
So,
you followed his advice, you'd be on the downside.
And like Rashi says, he says you're going to come back to your ancestors' inheritance. Vilama tafsid hadinar. Why should you lose the dinar? Okay. B'masnisa tana, but the Brisa has a slightly different way of formulating it, and it says, Achar arba'as alafim u'masayim u'shloshim ve'echashan lebrias olam. After 4,231 years from creation, which is 4,000, what did we say?
231 years into the
4,231 and 31.
Minus 34.
Right? If someone tells that to you, so what year did we say the Churban took place?
38, 28.
3828 plus 400 is how much? Is 4228. So this Brisa says 4231 instead of 4228. If someone comes to you, which is 403 years after the Churban, and says, here's a piece of property, I'll give it to you just for a dinar, even though it's worth 1,000, don't buy it. So what's the difference between Rabbi Chanina's calculus and the Brisa's? The Brisa adds an extra 3 years. The only thing that Rashi and the Gemara don't explain is where do you get this number 400 versus 403? It's quite unclear. Tosfos attempts to explain that it has to do with the Gemara in Sanhedrin, that Eliyahu Hanavi told Rav Yehuda, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, that the world will not be less than 85 Yovel cycles, meaning that Mashiach will not come before 85 Yovel cycles. And so Rav Yehuda asked him, the 85th Yovel cycle, is he coming at the beginning of the cycle, or is he coming at the end of the cycle? And Eliyahu said, good question. Even he didn't know the answer to that question. Right. He's right. So it's almost like this Monty Python skit. But anyway, so the Gemara now says, so basically the Gemara is saying, when the majority of the 85th Yovel cycle elapses, is when Mashiach will come. At least that's the calculation. And therefore there's a slight discrepancy as what is considered the majority of that 85th Yovel cycle. Is it at 4228, or is it at 4231? So anyway, so hahu shtar dahavaksiv be shishnin yisirta. There was a shtar that actually was presented to Beis Din. There was a man who was a creditor. He says, I have a promissory note. The problem is it was using the Greek date, and it was 6 years after the present date. So, Savar Rabbanan Kamei de Rav Nachman Lameimar Haishtara Ma'ucharhu Niakve Adamat Zimne Velo Tarif. The rabbis thought that this was a post-dated promissory note. That basically, when you post-date an IOU, what you're essentially saying is you're giving leeway to the debtor to say that there's no lien on your property until this post-dated time. And so the rabbis therefore wanted to argue that because this was a post-dated shtar, the lien on the debtor's property, you have to wait those 6 years before he can actually collect the debt and stake a claim on the debtor's property. So, but Amar Rav Nachman, Hai Safra Dukna Kasve, so Rav Nachman said no. This sofer who wrote this shtar with that date, that 6 years later, was very precise. V'hanach shishnin demolchu be'elam da'analo chashvinan luhu hu kachashiv le uvizmane kasve. And really, the reason why he's off 6 years is because he counted the original 6 years of the Greeks that we don't count on our dating system, because we count 380 years before the Churban, which is the year 40 of the Second Temple era. But this sofer was counting 34 years is the beginning of the Greek Empire, because that's when they took over from the Persians. The reason we don't count the first 6 years is because those first 6 years that they reigned was only isolated to a region called the Elam region, and the empire had not expanded yet throughout the rest of the Middle East and the civilized world. And that's the reason why there's that discrepancy. The Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer Sheishanim Malchu be'Elam ve'achar kach pashta malchusim b'cholam kulo. As Rabbi Yossi teaches in the Brisa, for the first 6 years they were only isolated in the Elam region, and then afterwards they expanded to the rest of the world. And so that's the discrepancy. This is not a post-dated promissory note. It's actually dated for the present.